This is more important than it has ever been. As Doge and the Trump administration gears up to investigate insider trading, this exchange Joe Rogan had with Tulsi Gabbard back when she was still a Democrat spills a lot of beans about how it really works, especially with someone like Nancy Pelosi. Take a look for yourself before I give you the full picture.
I mean, it would be wonderful if we could get money entirely out of politics. If the only way that a politician could make money while they're in office is just their salary.
Yeah.
If we said it that way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you're aware of the Nancy Pelosi stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
It's wild.
It is. And look, I think this is one of the good things about social media is, of course, the mainstream corporate media is hardly covering it at all. But because of social media, things like that are spreading like wildfire, like, hey, Paul Pelosi is doing these trades within this period of time of Nancy Pelosi voting on this bill or bringing a bill to the floor, because we've got to remember, Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, nothing happens without her knowing about it or giving her stamp of approval. So regardless of whether it's happening in the Judiciary Committee or the Commerce Committee or the Armed Services Committee, if there's a bill coming to the floor and there's major legislation that's being passed or is being squashed, that is happening with her say-so.
Also, please ignore the construction noises outside if you hear them. Anyway, what's so damning, Nancy Pelosi is probably the longest-serving congresswoman at this point, coming up near 4 decades, and it's the combination of a venture capitalist like her husband Paul Pelosi and herself in Congress with advanced knowledge about legislation, bills, and classified briefings that lend weight to these allegations in the eyes of so many people. Again, allegedly. By the way, we're asking the tough questions the mainstream media never will, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to always be the first to see it. Now, while she claims she doesn't own any stocks and it's all in her husband's name, that doesn't necessarily help her case that much when she's worth tens of millions herself. You know, for instance, my parents share their accounts. And as much as she tried to shy away from these questions most of her career, it is impossible for people not to ask them, especially now in the age of social media.
First of all, she doesn't want it becoming a big, important thing that people are talking about.
Yeah.
Where people start, excuse me, where people start looking at it and say, well, how much money have you made?
Yeah.
Like, why are you worth $200 million? That's crazy. You make $200,000 a year. You're worth $200 million. Like, what's going on? And you look at, like, Paul Pelosi's stock, like, what his record is. He's better than Warren Buffett and George Soros, who are like wizards.
Yeah, exactly.
Those guys are the best. And he's better than them.
Yep.
But it's 100% insider trading. If you think about what they put Martha Stewart away in jail for, that's nothing. Yeah. That's nothing compared to what she's doing.
And she's not the only one, obviously.
No.
There are, and this is where, you know, the quote unquote uniparty in Washington has been blocking this kind of legislation from being passed because they're both benefiting from it. We had, I think, there are Republican and Democrat senators in the lead up towards COVID who knew about it, right, and started making different investments in as we were approaching it, even before the rest of the country knew about it, so that they could profit financially from it. Just absolutely disgusting.
It's crazy. It's just crazy that it's legal.
Yeah.
It's really egregious, and it's shocking how complicit the mainstream media is in ignoring it.
Unbelievable. And if your politicians could be thinking about how to profit from a pandemic, who's to say it doesn't get uglier when they know something like a war is about to start? That's why there's so many proponents today of the idea that one of the buy-ins to being in public office should be to give up your right to trade in the stock market. There's just too many loopholes that cannot be plugged, especially when it's those same people responsible for plugging them. I mean, hey, they've got a good job. Why do they need it? These questions have been raised from all the way back in 2008 when the Pelosi's participated in the IPO for Visa precisely while there was important credit card regulation expected to impact the price of the stock. Then, of course, most recently there have been allegations of Paul Pelosi curiously buying millions worth of Nvidia stock right before Congress was about to pass the CHIPS Act, funneling a lot of money into the semiconductor industry right on the onset of the AI revolution. You think a lot of this stuff should get more airtime, but what Tulsi Gabbard said next reveals a lot about how things really work on the inside, especially with congressmen or journalists that try to point these things out allegedly.
Do you think that there's some discussion Or is it just an understanding that you'll lose access to these people if you highlight this? Like, why are they not covering that?
It's like this chummy insiders club in Washington. And, a common term that's being used now is called permanent Washington, which really fits when you think about it, because it kind of encapsulates that whole swampy ecosystem of both those who've been elected into positions, those who are longtime appointed or powerful bureaucrats, and the corporate media. They all go out to the same parties, the same social functions, passing information to each other. And so, if the anchor of a big time news show says, hey guys, guess what? Nancy Pelosi and her husband are insider trading, then they have to think about, oh, well, am I burning a bridge? Am I cutting off access to, information that she or her staff might be feeding me that I can break news on, and all this stuff. So, it's like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And if you start pissing off certain people, then you get kicked out of the cool kids club. That's really what's at the heart of it. And so they play along, because this issue's come up before. It came up years ago. Congress said, okay, we're going to take action to stop insider trading and make sure that elected leaders aren't benefiting off of insider information. And so they passed the Stock Act, which did nothing. Essentially, it just said, okay, if you are going to trade in stocks or buy or sell stocks, you have to report it. You have to be transparent about it. Most of Congress has failed to do even that. So it did nothing to stop it. It says, you just got to tell us. And most people are like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you anyway.
And there's no repercussions?
And there's well, they might get like a $100 fine, $200 fine. As they make millions in their trades.
And that's why you can never expect this change to come from that old political establishment class. There's a whole nexus of interest groups that keep each other on the same path, even as far as journalists, who know the only way they can get the best stories is if they're invited to their close parties and become a part of their close-knit club. It's an open secret, even to the point that there are entire websites dedicated to tracking the trading behavior of the Pelosis to alert enthusiastic investors to copy their trades to make some money. If you want a window into what it would be like if someone brave enough actually did pose this tough question to her, you'll have to go back nearly 15 years ago when journalist Steve Croft from 60 Minutes put Nancy Pelosi on the spot about allegations of insider trading.
Madam Leader, I wanted to ask you why you and your husband back in March of 2008 accepted and participated in a very large IPO deal from Visa. At a time there was major legislation affecting their credit card companies making its way through the House. And did you consider that to be a conflict of interest?
I don't know what your point is of your question. Is there some point that you want to make with that?
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think it's all right for a speaker to accept a very preferential and favorable stock deal?
Well, we didn't.
You participated in the IPO.
Well, I have many
and at the time you were
investments,
Speaker of the House. You don't think it was a conflict of interest or had the appearance of a conflict of interest?
It only has the appearance if you decide that you're going to have elaborate on a false premise. But it's not true, and that's that.
I don't understand what part's not true.
Yes, sir. That I would act upon an investment.
I don't know if we're going to see something like this ever again, but perhaps there's a degree of unease when information about these trades and their political fallout is much harder to contain in the digital age. That's what we're seeing happening right now, even if they still remain allegations from a technical standpoint. But let me know in the comments how you untangle this entire mess, because we may see this administration make some moves to rein in these alleged conflicts of interest in the halls of our government.